Welcome to the San Diego Chargers Daily Fantasy Team Preview. I'm Jason Gilbo. With me is Russell Clay. Taking a look at a Chargers team that really wasn't that efficient last year. Obviously, they dealt with the injury of Keenan Allen, a Melvin Gordon. This pod will be interesting because I know you are a Melvin Gordon guy. So we'll jump right into that. That's how we'll kick things off.
If this were like a presidential election, and yes, I've been watching a lot of House of Cards lately, so we're gonna bring this. This would be 2015 would be the equivalent of like him murdering someone and it getting leaked, and he was running for president. Like, this was tragic. We got drafted in the first round. We had a great college career, and then he got microfracture surgery in the offseason. So this has been a lot of bad things happening. I still have belief in him and his ability. But, I mean, you look at that 2015 running game, and it was disastrous. No matter who was in there, Woodhead obviously did well in the passing game. But, I mean, go through the yards per carry, it was pretty consistent. Woodhead on 98 carries, 3.4 yards per carry. Brandon Oliver on his 31, 3.5 yards per carry, and Melvin Gordon on his 184, 3.5 yards per carry. Worst in the league. They were the worst run team in the NFL last year. Part of it was because of their line, but part of it was because, again, an inexperienced Melvin Gordon they were trying to throw into a feature role, and Danny Woodhead, who just simply isn't a between-the-tackles runner. So they've been rumored to have made a few upgrades via free agency and such, but that's something I'm going to need to see before I believe, even as a Melvin Gordon truther. Early on in the year, just not a spot I'm looking to attack, I guess I would word it, you know?
And I think you're a little more invested in Melvin Gordon, than I am, obviously, because you want him to see him succeed.
Right.
Personally, I don't care if he does or not. I mean, obviously, it would be nice. I'm just looking at this offense. I mean, as you mentioned, the line had its problems. Obviously, the defense was very up and down last year. They threw more passing plays than any other team in the league, 716 passing plays. That's not good for someone who does want to have a featured role that's only rushing for whatever you said, 3.5 yards per carry. Yeah. You would like a more efficient back if you are not going to run as much. So that's my problem with Gordon. And obviously because Woodhead was so successful and because their offense flowed better when he was out there and being that dump-off type guy and used heavily in the red zone, it's something that I could see definitely happening again if – things don't kind of pick up, especially. I think the leash is going to be shorter.
And what I would say to that is I agree, and I think it's something to be very aware of as far as rostering Melvin Gordon early on, because we don't know what those touches are going to look like, because they aren't going to be a prolific running team this year. So whoever you're starting for a running back there needs to be the one they're using in the receiving game. I just think that's the way you play it, and you probably wait out that first month, maybe throw Woodhead in there in tournaments, and then go from there. But, yeah, I'm not expecting too much this year.
No, and I think it's going to be a situation where I'm looking to use Woodhead in the early weeks and kind of hoping people are not on him as much early on, because people weren't really when he was within the first couple of weeks, even though he was okay. He obviously had those big boom weeks, but it kind of took those for people to realize, oh, I should be playing this guy on DraftKings because he's getting a ton of targets and he's also getting a ton of looks inside the red zone, which was obviously something. I mean, 6 red zone touchdowns last year for Woodhead. I mean, pretty solid number for a guy of his stature. And he's not a big guy. And given the fact that obviously Keenan Allen went down midseason, that kind of helped Woodhead get 111 targets last year out of the backfield. He's a guy who I still will be looking at. Obviously, you and I are both not big Woodhead fans as an athlete, but obviously fantasy-wise, he has the potential.
Yes, exactly. And this is not a evaluating the player game. This is a who's going to score the most fantasy points game. So we'll leave it at that. But all right. So I guess we can translate. Transition. All right. Anyway, Malcolm Floyd is gone after a very long tenure with the Chargers and with Phillip Rivers. That's the deep threat. Gone. So their deep threat role is open. They brought in Travis Benjamin, who had a really good fourth year with the Browns last year in 2015, and I think he's going to fit right into that role. Although I do see him as more of an intermediate guy. I think they're going to use the deep threats as more of a committee role than anything else. But yeah, I think you're going to see a version of Travis Benjamin trying to take some of those targets that Floyd is leaving behind. Is that kind of what you're seeing there?
Yeah, I definitely agree. And also the fact that Stevie Johnson is out indefinitely with his injury is going to open up, obviously, even more targets. I believe Dontrell Inman's the guy who's going to step into Stevie Johnson's role and not necessarily be a guy to use, but it's just more going to focus, targets on Gates, Benjamin, obviously Allen. I don't mind Travis Benjamin. I think he's going to be a great GPP target because now he actually has a decent quarterback throwing to him. And he's also has Keenan Allen, Gates, around him where he can kind of slip under the radar. It might have a big week or two. I definitely don't mind him as a tournament option this year.
Yeah, totally agree. Tournament option. I don't see him ever sort of flowing into a cash game type of option because Rivers is a dink and dunk type passer. I mean, I don't think that's changing. Obviously, super accurate, but he's at his best when he's throwing. Those guys are doing those digs and just short routes, and he's chopping away at the defense there within the first 10 yards of scrimmage. To Gates, we've all seen it, just where he dumps it off to Gates, dumps it off to Allen. So that's kind of where he's at. If Benjamin can get those deep targets, great, but I see him as more of a GPP guy. And moving to Allen, I mean, I think he's going to be the cash game guy in this offense if there is one. Obviously, huge volume in 8 games last year, 725 receiving yards, 67 receptions. Gotta love that on DraftKings at the very least. I expect him to get relatively similar volume last year. I think he Gates was out quite a few games when that was going on. But either way, he's the number one in this offense, and I like any number one target with Phillip Rivers.
Yeah, I'm definitely in agreement. I mean, Allen's going to be a cash game guy for me on DraftKings quite a bit just because that PPR scoring there. And as far as Gates goes, I mean, he's going to be a week-to-week guy who I'll definitely be considering. I'll never quite see if he makes it to a cash game level for me, depending on, I guess, the salary. I guess my thing is kind of just looking ahead in the future and maybe trying to predict something that happens is what happens if this team gets banged up? I mean, we saw Gates. I mean, Gates is up there in age. Allen's a guy who definitely can miss some time. They're already lacking. We could see a potential for a really big disaster situation in San Diego where this offense is just decimated.
And so normally I would get excited about them. They drafted Hunter Henry this year in the second round out of Arkansas, sort of a tight end, wide receiver hybrid type guy. And I'm just so jaded by first-year tight ends that I can't envision him getting too prominent of a role. But like you mentioned, if worst comes to worst and Gates is 35 and hurt and Allen's banged up again, I mean, they might be forced to use him, and he's super talented. So, and like you mentioned, they do have Dontrell Inman. They do have another guy who's emerging named Tyrell Williams. I guess he's been getting some good praise in training camp. So there's that as well. But those are more – it's just not going to be pretty if they lose Allen or Gates, basically.
No, it definitely won't. I mean, I think more so with Allen if Allen goes down.
Yeah.
I mean, you just look at Gates. It's like you can easily just kind of key on him because he's not the mobile tight end that he used to be. He just relies so heavily on other guys now.
Yeah.
I still think it's going to be a GPP team to target outside of Allen. I still think it could be a fun offense as far as the passing game goes, just because Rivers does sling the ball around, especially on that PPR scoring. I don't know, though. It's still a tough division. I think there's going to be more bad weeks than good ones for sure with this Chargers team, just given the fact that you're going to play, basically 6 in-division games of really tough defenses, because Oakland's defense is something that is on the up and up. And obviously, joining a Denver elite defense, a Kansas City elite defense, there's going to be some down weeks in the division for Rivers and this team.
And we just talked about the Chiefs and the Broncos, like you mentioned. Raiders have some serious athletes on that defense now. So, yeah, definitely on the up and up there. So certainly something to take into account.
Yeah, definitely. And as far as the San Diego defense goes, how do you see them kind of playing out this year? I mean, obviously, they were bad at times last year, but obviously ranking 19th, there certainly are worse defenses to target. Are they something that could be surprising, or do you see them more just being average?
From what I understand, Jason Verrett is an extremely strong cornerback and someone to probably avoid on a week-to-week basis for wide receiver ones. But I think beyond that, they're really weak. So something to take into account for sure.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they didn't really have a good rush defense either last year, and if kind of situation emerges where a team has a decent spread, I'm okay with using kind of running backs against them.
For sure.
So that's going to wrap it up with our Chargers team preview. Be sure to check out the rest of our teams at dailyfantasycafe.com.